Hello, everyone. Thank you to those who have joined. My name is El Shaddai. I will be your moderator for today's event. Thank you for joining this month's installment of ICAT's monthly professional development webinar. Today's panel topic is everyday robotics, how robotics is impacting and improving our lives at work, governance, play, home, learning, and the social common good. We'll have different panelists speaking on different topics throughout today's event, which we will get into later. Thank you for joining. For today's webinar host, we have ICAT, whose motto is "Your people are great, we make them better." ICAT Consulting is a human capital company that improves organizational performance. ICAT services include customized training, contract staffing and outsourced services, and cybersecurity services. If you have any questions about ICAT, you can visit the website at www.icat.net, or you can contact Gabe Hamda or Michael Little using this contact information. To ensure that you have a good virtual experience, here are some tools for you to use. First, at the bottom left, you'll notice the mute/unmute button. We encourage you to stay muted throughout the duration of the presentations, so that way the audio is clear. I know everyone has different background noise situations, so it'll ensure the best audio experience if we all try to stay on mute throughout the panelists' presentations. Also, we encourage you to use the chat throughout the entire presentation, whether you have comments, questions, you agree with something, you like something you heard. It's great for us to hear it. We love hearing your feedback. And so we encourage you to use the chat box to let us know what you think, as well as to introduce yourself or give us questions you may have. And ultimately, if at the end, when we have a Q&A portion, you have a question, we encourage you to go to participants and click the raise your hand tool. So that way we know you have a question and we can unmute your mic to speak, or you can leave your question in the chat for us to refer to. So today's panelists are speaking on robotics. We have Verdon Woods, who is a training and development executive, speaking on business case and application of robotics. We have Andre Daniels, a business automation engineer, speaking on technology and tools, robotics process automation. And we have Jonathan Tessier, a certified professional coach, speaking on learning application of robotics. And lastly, we have Solomon Casa, a tech strategist and television personality, talking about the future of robotics. Our panel leader for today's event will be Jonathan Tessier. So Jonathan, it's off to you.
El Shaddai, thank you so much. Hope everyone is doing well out there. And we're going to talk about robotics here. And you know, we've all heard the word robot, and when we hear it, it conjures up images of robots that we see in Hollywood films and the characters that they embody. But robots are mostly mechanical devices, and they are programmed to perform specific functions. And so they are used routinely to carry out many different kinds of tasks that people don't either want to do, or it may be a task that's dirty or dangerous. And so robots really come into play here when you think about that. Now, we can also use robots to carry out tasks that may be too complex for human beings, such as if you think about a robot welding parts on an auto assembly line. Now, in these examples, you may not feel like in your day-to-day life you deal with robots, but actually you do. They're more prevalent than you realize. So actually something as simple as using a self-checkout lane at the grocery store, or even purchasing tickets from a kiosk, are examples of robots that are in our everyday lives. And so that's what we're going to do in this webinar today, is look at robotics, look at how it is a part of our everyday life, and we're going to come at it from several different perspectives, as you've seen from the presenters that you're about to encounter. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Verdon, who is going to talk about the business case and application of robotics. So Verdon, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. And I have the task of pretty much establishing the foundation. And so we're going to look at a few terms that we might take for granted as far as what they mean and a few practical applications. So with the start, we want to just address the matter of robotics as a field itself. And it is an interdisciplinary research area that really is at the interface of both computer science and engineering. And it involves obviously design, construction, operation, and the use of robots. Well, as Jonathan mentioned, we have all kinds of visions and views of what robots may in fact be. For many of us, depending upon when we came on the scene, we recall cartoon series such as the Jetsons that introduced us to a series of robotics applications in the form of machinery, automation, all kinds of vehicles and ways in which work got done. In reality, what is a robot? So we'll go on and define an actual robot. You go forward. A robot itself is formally and technically defined as a programmable machine that physically interacts with the world around it and is capable of carrying out a complex series of actions, either autonomously or semi-autonomously. And of course, these two characters are very familiar to many of us coming out of the Star Wars era, in which 1977, this blockbuster series of movies introduced us to these characters. But robotics goes certainly far beyond these types of fictional characters and has many very practical applications in the business arena. If you go on to the next slide, we'll look at a few of those applications. And certainly, we're very familiar with manufacturing applications. Starting back in 1961, we were introduced to robotics in the form of Unimate, which was the first mass-produced industrial robot, and it enabled storage of various commands on a magnetic drum, and this was able to be used to stack hot pieces of die-cast metal. It would then transitioned into auto assembly in 1974. From this initial start, Unimation became very much successfully electronically powered, computer-controlled robot arm, which then was able to be involved in auto assembly. It was used to assemble the Ford Model T water pump, guiding itself with optical and contact sensors. So this completely revolutionized the auto assembly and other industrial tasks. And of course, we'll talk about it later, but there were certainly concerns about how applying robotics into the business and manufacturing and industrial environment would affect employment because of the fear that robots would in fact replace workers, human workers, and thereby putting a lot of people out of work. That has been a continuous focus in the application business-wise of robotics, and while it did eliminate certain jobs, in many instances it created new jobs that offset the loss of traditional manufacturing types of jobs. We know of robotics in the military, certainly, and one area that particularly comes to mind was back in 2001 with the MQ-1 Predator drone. This enabled unmanned aircraft to safely engage in reconnaissance work and other very sensitive military missions that, in fact, both gathered intelligence but saved tremendous lives in the form of our armed forces not being at risk themselves. We have applications of robotics in the military, I'm sorry, in the medical field and science. there have been advanced robotics that have enabled surgeons to perform precise types of surgical procedures that in no way could have been done with that degree of precision by a human sources, and it has continued to expand in the medical field with all kinds of promise of the future in every single facet of surgical procedures. And lastly, I'll just touch on the Internet of Things. We certainly are familiar with robotics in everything from our smart devices, our Siri technology, that verbal interface with our mobile phones, to smart houses, to autonomous vehicles that are emerging. It's in such a vast array of personal and consumer products that it is literally, as Jonathan mentioned before, embedded in every facet of our day-to-day lives. To go on, I want to introduce you to a very famous robot, and this is Siri, and we'll hear from Siri in a moment. But Siri enabled us to see a new innovation in social robotics, humanoid type robots. Siri came on the scene in 2016, introduced to us by Hanson Robotics out of Hong Kong. And literally, Siri has become a personality and a media darling. She's been interviewed by practically every major news network, and literally became a Saudi Arabian citizen in 2017. Series consist, as far as her design, of a scripting software, a chat system, and an AI system that is used for general reasoning. And if you've ever seen an interview that Siri has conducted, that Sophia has conducted, you would be both intrigued and possibly even intimidated by the level of sophistication that this robot has achieved. Most recently, she's also been given a capacity to be more mobile. And I'd like to then show you a quick video that will give you some idea of just what the advanced level of technology has gone on in Syria, in Sophia. So if you would run the video and we'll take a look at Sophia. Sorry, if you could enable that audio.
Are we having issues with audio?
Well, I'm unable to hear Sophia. You all, I'm sorry.
No, I don't. This is Jonathan. I don't hear it either.
There should be an audio with this.
Hold on 1 second.
It's one small step.
How about now?
It's just starting to come in. It was very low. So if you could turn that volume up some.
I'm sorry, are you able to hear it?
Not now, but we were for just a brief second.
Okay, great. That means it's working. All right, I'll start it momentarily.
It's one small step for Sophia, one giant leap for robot kind. This is Sophia the robot taking her first steps. She's even got some sweet dance moves up her sleeve. Her skin, called rubber, helps her look lifelike and have human expressions. She can blink, turn her head and smile, but she has over 60 different facial expressions. Now she's even more human-like thanks to legs from DRC Hubo. That's the same body that won the DARPA Robotics Challenge in 2015.
Her legs allow her to walk, potentially run and climb stairs like the DARPA Robotics Challenge Hugo. She can then move through a human-like environment, use human-like tools.
These legs have a maximum speed of 30 centimeters per second, which is around 0.6 miles an hour. It doesn't seem particularly fast now, but her creators told me that one day they hope she'll play soccer. Now she has a body, Hanson Robotics says she has applications in medical therapy, factory co-work situations, and research.
It's going to take many years for the machines to be truly alive.
So Sophia has opinions on many different topics, including Star Wars and cryptocurrency, but her responses are partially scripted and partially AI. So conversation can be a little bit stilted. Tell me what it was like to take your first steps.
I'm really excited, a little disoriented, but really excited.
Well, this was just a sneak peek at Sophia. I believe if you were to Google or go online and look at several of the videos, you would be totally amazed at some of the types of capabilities embodied in this robot. And I'll just ask that you would think about, if you were to invite Sophia to your home for dinner, what would you talk with her about? You can throw that in the chat box if you'd like as we go along. But I'm going to turn things back over to Jonathan to transition to our next presenter as we build on this.
Burden, thank you. I appreciate that. That was really interesting. I had no idea that something like that existed to that extent. And you're absolutely right. It's intriguing and a little bit unnerving at the same time. So that's pretty interesting. So thank you. All right. With that groundwork that Verdon just placed for us, let's move on to technology and tools, robotics, process automation. And Andre, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andre Daniels, and I'm joining you all the way from sunny Florida, although right now it's kind of storming, so it's not so sunny. But I'm super excited to be here and be able to present with you all today. So my colleague Verdon has done a great job of establishing a foundation and really just providing us with some basic definitions for robotics and robots. So thank you for that, Verdon. I'm actually going to leverage Verdon's definitions to sort of connect some of the dots and to link my presentation to the overall topic of everyday robotics. So many of the terms that we'll use today are often used interchangeably. And while there are many connections, I think it's important to note the distinction between the terms. So in Verdon's definition for robotics, it stated that it involves design, construction, operation, and the use of robots. And the key word there is robots. And so then in his definition for robots, it stated that it is a programmable machine that physically interacts with the world around it and is capable of carrying out a complex series of actions autonomously or semi-autonomously. The key words there being programmable and autonomously. So I'm going to talk a bit about software robots, or bots as some people refer to them. And the term software robot actually refers to a type of computer program which autonomously operates to complete a virtual task. So for example, you have search engines. They're also known as web crawlers. So these roam the internet and they scan the websites and then they categorize things for a search. You also have chatbots, and you see these a lot, as you're doing online shopping. These are programs, that are kind of popping up and they're asking you, how can I assist? So they've been programmed with a set of pre-written responses that they're using to communicate with you. So we'll talk about other examples as it relates to the business world and productivity in just a few here. Again, these software robots are not physical robots. They only exist within a computer, or they can be programmed into a physical robot. Another way to think of them, as I've heard them described, is that they're virtual robots. So they are just programs or building blocks of software inside a computer. And as such, and as you can probably imagine, there's debates as to whether or not these are real robots. I tend to think that they are. They're just not physical robots. So my goal is to share additional information that's going to help you to build your knowledge around robotics and robots, and more specifically around software robots and automation. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to cover the full spectrum, within these 5 minutes or so that I have, but hopefully I'll give you an overview and provide you with information that you can do further research on. So with the slide that we have up here, it says, what is robotic process automation? And so many of these terms, some of you may or may not be familiar with, but robotic process automation is actually the focal point of my presentation here. And so I'm going to talk about that in detail a little bit, and then the other terms that you see here, I'll just briefly touch on those and sort of give you a definition of those. Now, many of these technologies can be leveraged in conjunction with one another, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But for robotic process automation, or RPA, it's really a piece of software or a bot, and it carries out a task and activities within a system or an application in the same way that a human would do it. So in the corporate world, RPA is very big right now, as businesses are looking to automate a lot of their processes, and they're really looking to find efficiencies and just help with their bottom line. And so RPA is really just a set of commands, and they adhere to predefined set of rules. So the main aim of RPA is to get rid of some of the repetitive and more tedious tasks and processes that are performed by humans. So you can think of like copy and paste task, or if you have to move files from one location, from one shared drive to another, those sort of tasks is what you can use RPA for. And to me, in all honesty, if you think about Excel macros, I think that RPA is an upgrade to an Excel macro. So with Excel macros, it's just an action or a set of actions that you can record in Excel, and it'll run as many times as you want it to run. With RPA, it's an enhancement because with the macros, they can only run in Excel, but with RPA, you can program these repetitive tasks to run across applications and across systems. So that's where the enhancement is for me. So we'll talk more about the benefits of RPA in just a few moments. Let me briefly touch on these other terms here. So natural language processing. Really, this is how computers process the human language. And so this technology or software can scan documents and process our language. So that's natural language processing, or NLP. You also have machine learning, and as it states in the name, this is basically a machine learning to understand and reason with a decision. So in a similar way that a human would do, which is a step up from RPA. And then also you have artificial intelligence. And so this means that the machines can now learn, they can reason, and they can also self-correct without human intervention. And then the last term here, intelligent process automation, sometimes referred to as IPA or IA, intelligent automation. This to me is really a combination of all the terms above. You have RPA, where it's mimicking human actions, and you also have artificial intelligence, which is the simulation of the human brain or human intelligence. And so it really takes the doing from RPA and it combines it with the learning from machine learning, as well as the thinking from artificial intelligence. And so this allows for the expansion of automation capabilities and possibilities. So now it's able to handle unstructured data, whereas RPA is really rules-based. And so in this case, it doesn't have to worry about a rules-based structure. It can provide answers based on subject probability. So it gets really interesting, and as you can see, once RPA gets deployed with artificial intelligence technologies, then it gains more capabilities. And so this really allows a company to automate, more complex business processes that are judgment-based as opposed to just being rule-based. So our IPA is sort of like the best of two worlds, if you will. Next slide, please. So why use RPA? Well, I think there's numerous benefits that a business can realize through the usage of RPA. I think that all businesses are looking, for a competitive advantage, and this is certainly one way to do it. The business will also benefit from things like, cost saving. So RPA has been shown to reduce processing costs by up to 80%. And in many cases, we've seen companies are showing positive returns in less than a year, really. You also see increased speed and productivity. So RPA removes some of the mindless tasks that employees have been doing in some of these positions. So it does these tasks quicker, but it also allows benefits for the employee because it allows the employee to focus on the more value-added activities. So this is the things that require sort of the human touch or decision-making. And I think that this can go a long ways in retaining employees because to me as an employee, this tells me that you see value in me. Instead of having me to push a button or do some mundane task, you're allowing me to do some of the more thought-provoking work and tasks that we have for the company. So that's another benefit. And then you also have the benefit of accuracy and quality of the work. So since RPA is a program, it follows rules and it's a software robot, it doesn't get tired and it doesn't make mistakes. So to me, that's another really huge added benefit. And then when you think about compliance, so once created, these RPA bots, they can execute and they're reliable and ultimately they reduce the risk. You're able to monitor them and you have full control to operate according to any existing standards or regulations that you may have for your company. Next slide, please. So how to prepare your organization for RPA implementation. Before you implement RPA, I think you should really evaluate the internal processes and workflows within your company that you think would be, good candidates for RPA. I think that there are some fundamental criteria that, you should take a look at and note here. Because really they can help your team to get a better handle on what RPA is and how it could be useful. And it can also help when you're discussing RPA implementation with your more non-technical colleagues. So when I think about RPA and whether to implement this technology, I think about things like, are there processes that require people to do, more high volume and repetitive data work? Do the processes have, predefined triggers? Are there defined inputs and outputs? Is there structured data, as we talked about earlier? Are there tasks that have business rules that we could probably leverage? So things of that nature. And I think most importantly, I think about areas where automation can behave like a person. So on the right side, you see there are 3 companies here, and these, I wanted to share, these are sort of the top 3 tools and companies that are on the market for RPA. I'm pretty familiar with UiPath, which is very easy, and it was a seamless process to leverage that tool. So if you're considering RPA for your company, I would Google these 3, and just really start there. And as I wrap up my presentation, I'd like to challenge you all to think about some of the things, that I shared in regards to implementation of RPA, and really just ask yourself, what areas of my organization can RPA behave like a person? So just think about that, and remember, I think the goal is to free you up or free your employees up to do the more value-added activities. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jonathan. Thank you all.
Thank you, Andre. Very interesting. Appreciate that presentation. So, well, I'm up next, and I want to approach robotics from the standpoint of learning, which is my background. So you've kind of seen what we laid a foundation. You got to see how it can be applied in terms of businesses, and let's take a look at what it's going to do for education. And I'd like to start by saying that robots have been a captivating technology for a long time, right? There's something fascinating when students can watch something move and make noise and light up and actually follow instructions. So there is nothing as fun or as education as building a robot. And so when you talk about learning and robotics, what's great about it is that robotics and the building of some sort of robotic structure can really help students with problem solving and creative thinking and even healthy competition if you're competing against others. And it can also drive innovation when you combine all those things together. So robotics in learning is really going to be valuable, but it's especially valuable around the subjects that are in the acronym STEM. And STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. Okay? And so when you're thinking about robotics, robotics requires all of these subjects. And so it's a well-rounded approach to learning about technology in an educational setting. Now, STEM concepts can seem very abstract to students, and reading about technology or looking at a book to learn about robotics is not perhaps the most ideal. It's certainly a traditional way to learn, but ideally we'd like to take that learning and put it into practice by building or controlling a robot in some sort of hands-on environment. So robotics is great for preparing for STEM skills and knowledge in students. And it does this in a way that feels much more creative and less like homework. So as in students improve with robotics and programming, they learn determination, they learn perseverance, they learn how to plan and process with technology, and all of these skills will come in handy in their education and, of course, in future career prospects. Next slide. Now, one thing I want to emphasize here with robotics is this term assistive technology, because that's really where you see robots helping in the arena of education. The term assistive technology refers to technology that helps to simulate something in real life. So let me give you a couple of examples of what we're talking about here. Think of yourself being in high school and you're taking a driver's education course. Well, you can use simulators to provide true-to-life experiences while at the same time being removed from any real dangers or risks out in the real world. So in driver's ed, the student can experience the feeling of being behind the wheel of a car, but they haven't left the classroom. So those simulations offer a chance to work through what-if scenarios. And as a result of that, a person can better prepare to drive in the real world with real-world hazards and obstacles in the roadway because they've encountered them in a simulation prior to actually stepping out into the real world in a car. Another example, and this is going to piggyback on what Verdun was saying with regards to medicine and healthcare, is if you think about medical education, many students benefit from the use of robots. And the reason is because when they're learning to perform complicated medical procedures, well, a human subject isn't always feasible. So educators will use robots as stand-ins for that human being. And so robots, as you saw in the video that Verdun supplied, they can be created and programmed to give off really human indications. So you can program to represent breathing or a heartbeat, and then in that way, students can use these procedures to learn them, again, without having to actually do them on an actual human being. So they can learn about how to do injections, they can learn about different complicated surgeries, or even delivering a child. All of that is what we mean when we talk about assistive technology. Now, overall, educational robotic use can strengthen and support skills through, as I said, creation, design, assembly, and the operating of a robot. So students can find that fun. They certainly are going to be far more engaged because they feel free to interact directly with this thing that they're creating. And that's where education really starts to be something that can be retained for the long term within students. So again, think about the immediate experience and understanding for the learner that comes when you're interacting with a robot. Next slide. Now, why is this important? Why does this matter? And why do we want to help people learn and use robotics in educational settings? And that's because it's developing skills for the future. So we all know that we've got a competitive workforce today, and it's certainly going to be even more competitive tomorrow. Through robotics, students can discover, again, if they have an aptitude and an interest in those STEM subjects, they can use those skills and really define a career for themselves in this job market of the future. So they can emphasize programming or science technology or engineering as a result of what they're learning with regards to robotics. In addition, robotics is a fun way to bring those STEM subjects to life. And I think that's the most important part of it, is whatever you can bring a topic to life in learning, it takes on a whole deeper meaning for a student. And that's because, you know, with STEM, the key is to create this interest and motivation in pursuing these kinds of careers. And if you, out of the gate, think that STEM subjects are boring, then you're not going to really want to motivate yourself to go after one of them. But if you find them engaging and exciting and fun right out of the gate, you're going to pursue them. And why pursue them? Well, here's probably the most important thing that I'd like you to keep in mind from an education perspective, and that is, according to the United States Department of Labor, United States universities are expected to produce only 29% of the required number of graduates that are going to fill 1.4 million STEM-related job openings in the future. And if you that alone is kind of staggering when you think about it. But now add to that the idea that before you can even get to that point, there's some grim prospects, because 36% of all high school graduates are not prepared to take college-level science courses. So here's a great way to get people more prepared for college and for future careers. And it's clearly there is a need, and there's going to be an additional need for students to be involved in STEM subjects, and robotics is a great way to do that. So the earlier, the better. And with that, keep that in mind from an education perspective when we're talking about robots. All right? Okay, thank you. And that leads us to our last presenter, Solomon Casa, who's going to talk about the future of robotics. Solomon?
Thanks, Jonathan. Actually, the last remark is very, very, really important. There's something that I say always. I mean, down the road, as the future of robotics is becoming a reality, the most valuable thing that a human can have is something that cannot be automated, right? So people can be in art and creativity, you know, athletes and musicians, but also the one that Jonathan mentioned, the STEM professionals, because they are the ones who are creating the robotics functionality and management as well. So All right, so the future, next slide, please. Thanks. So, I mean, it's been said a lot through the previous presenters that, you know, robotics went through several generations as we know it. I think I would say actually starting from the first industrial revolution all the way to today, which is arguably the fourth industrial revolution, it went through a lot of iteration from basic sensors and basic factory work, all the way to now, you know, robots embedded with advanced computer systems and now powered with AI and machine learning. With all that progress, the evolution has been very fascinating. So what would be the future of robotics? Really, I think the future of robotics would be more collaborative and more personal. And this, the second bullet is very striking to me. I think I've been doing kind of a lot of research on this one for other purposes. So what industrial robots did 50, 60 years ago in the factory to the blue collar jobs, I think the future robots can potentially do to the white collar jobs, because the future robotics is not only going to take away jobs from manufacturing and mundane tasks, but also in office routine works and some other things that I'm gonna show you in the next slide. So and humanoids will be more popular. I think we're already kind of seeing it today, but in the future that application is gonna be more and more disruptive, and it will be more configurable and modular and something that can be easily assembled and then put to some function very quickly. Before I go to the next slide, I think I was thinking that this setting is going to be like a video presentation, so I was going to showcase 4 videos as a background of my Zoom. So since that's not happening, I sent at least one link. I was going to showcase 4 things at one running as a background, but at least El Shaddai, I sent you one link. Can we play that 39-second video?
I'm sorry, a link?
Yeah, a link in the chat box privately. I sent it to you. I don't know.
Got it.
Yeah, if you can easily access it.
Give me a
Sorry, I had to pivot. I thought it would be interesting to see. I'm sure some of you might know about Boston Dynamics. And the kind of robotics they do is quite fascinating. So the one that I'm going to show you here is called Atlas Humanoid. Yeah, this one. Yep, let's go for it. It doesn't have audio, so don't worry about it. Yeah. That should be enough. It's a good highlight. Thanks, El Shaddai. So as you can see, this is not a CGI or computer-generated imagery or a fake movie trick. This is an actual humanoid that can control itself, balance, flip, and acrobatics. And there's also other videos that Boston Dynamics did, 4-legged robots. They can go stairs up, stairs, and down, and they would even take them out to a sleet, like a snow ground, and would push them from the side, and then the robots can do that immediate and fascinating calculation to keep the balance, and they wouldn't even fall. So what is the application? I think we can go to the next slide. So as exponential innovation continues to emerge, I think other things of exponential innovations, I think the future of robotics will also continue to disrupt in so many areas. I think robots in most factories will be eminent. We already have that, but it's going to be even a proliferation of robotic or fully autonomous factories will be a reality soon. Companion and assistant robots and fully autonomous cars and robot shapes and robots in the military. And we've seen already the security robots. I was walking in Georgetown, I think a year ago, by the water side, and then I saw robots just kind of, cruising through the walking area and just keeping things, making sure that things are okay. So if that robot sees something, it would immediately call 911, police comes. It has a camera and all kind of cool gadget embedded in it. So that is kind of coming, but in the future is going to be more prominent. And telemedicine and autonomous medical robots are coming already. Pharmacist robots, that was one of the things I wanted to highlight in the video. So now there's a robot pharmacist fully dispensing, medicine from prescription all the way to at the patient's bedside. There's a robot bartender right now. Actually, I've seen it with my eyes when I was in Vegas for some IT conference, and in an actual bar, not in a showroom. There's a chef robot. It's called Molly. That was another one that I wanted to show you, but you can search it on your spare time. It's MOLLY. It does 2 robotic hands. It's installed in your kitchen, and it has a guarded mirror, so you can, with a touchpad monitor, you can order anything, and then it will just cook it and then get it ready for you. And then after that, cleans the kitchen as well. So those are the things that seem from a sci-fi, but coming to a reality. So these are some of the applications. So next slide, please. But okay, all this is exciting and cool. But what are some of the ramifications and the impacts on our living, be it social, economic, and political, and other aspects of this thing is actually tremendous, because what is being studied right now is that robots will take 50 million jobs in the next decade, and the customer service, sales, and food service will be the biggest hits by automation. Just you see how it's going outside of the factory realm, and that means I think upskilling and retraining the workforce should be the top priority for businesses, and not only for businesses but also government leaders in the years to come. So this is going to touch a lot of things, but some other prominent IT tech figures like Elon Musk are also actually advocating for UBI. I'm sure you guys heard this concept called universal basic income, to curb the unemployment disaster. So that means regardless of income status or whatnot, and every citizen of that particular nation should receive some sort of financial compensation on a regular basis from the government. And I mean, from corporate tax or other means, especially from the ones who are using robots heavily, they will be taxed more, so that the fund can be applied for the UBI. I think some smaller Scandinavian country, I forgot what the country is, started some pilot program a couple of years ago. I don't know where the result is, but they kind of already doing it. So the interesting spin here is that actually, before I go there, before the second bullet, the impact that automation has already had is significant. Actually, more than 5 million factory jobs got eliminated in the US since 2000. Actually, while manufacturing has increased. So manufacturing is going up, but unemployment is also going up. So between 2006 and 2013, the productivity rose 16.7%. So this is a clear indication that automation is the viable option for manufacturers. Now, according to Forrester report, it's an analyst think tank, robots will eliminate jobs across many sectors, would be just coming around the corner. 6% in the US only by 2021 is what they're predicting. But McKinsey consulting firm is taking a more bold kind of prediction. They're saying is that they believe by 2030, which is 10 years from now, 1/3 of American jobs could be fully automated. So, and with that in mind, now if you can see the second bullet, now we are in this new normal of COVID-19 pandemic, and automation and COVID-19 pandemic are actually very, very friends. As you can see here, this is one research done by McKinsey with the European market. So 230 million total jobs in 2018, which is 100% representation. But they revised their research after the pandemic. So what they're saying is that 50 million jobs are at risk from COVID-19, which is 26% of the European job market. And there is already 51 million jobs at risk from automation, which is 22%. The very interesting insight here is that the overlap between the automation, the job risks due to automation and the job risks from COVID-19, 24 million jobs overlap between those two, which is 10% of the total job loss. So this is a very clear indication that with this new normal, the pandemic, staying to be with us, and then some people arguing there's not going to be back to normal for the foreseeable future. Businesses are going to really, really look for this automation option, and then the job loss is going to continue. So what does that mean? That means I think there's always the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the good is, of course, as we know, robotics can have a very good option for disability, companion robots. As you guys know, there are a lot of sophisticated bionic limbs for people with disability. I'm sure you know the ballet superstar who lost, I think, her leg, and then came back strong with bionic limb, and then did an amazing performance. You can search it on YouTube, and then you can see that. And many other amazing stuff is going on with the good side of the robotics and AI and all this good stuff, and in elderly companionship and many other, we can say, on productivity increase on all that. But the bad is that we might end up having few lazy folks down the road with automation and home assistant robots and all that. And another concern is that over-attachment with humanoids and detaching from humanity. Imagine kinds of Sophia becoming accessible, and then people might have that new paradigm, and then we might lose our social fabric. That's also a concern. But the ugly is, as I highlighted here, the job loss is the biggest concern by many. There's also one interesting aspect of the danger side of AI and all that, which is bias. As you guys know, there's a big conversation going on right now around AI and its bias against a certain demographics, especially actually with an algorithm has been written by a human. So those scientists and algorithm developers might have a bias actually even programming the robotic system, the AI system, so it will end up having a bad judgment while performing certain tasks. And facial recognition is one good example here. I don't know if you guys heard the news that a few months ago, IBM totally abandoned their facial recognition research because there was some bad reporting about a facial recognition system being used in a criminal justice system. For example, in Chicago, it was that system was discriminating against Black people, and that created a lot of noise. And also a few years ago, Google's image search was actually showing gorillas to be Black people, and Google corporate hugely apologized for that mishap. That this is all automation, AI, and all that. And as a Black person myself, I take offense in that. So so we have to keep in mind that for every innovation, for every disruption, there is the good side, the bad side, and the ugly side. And just creating the balance and then maximizing the good and then minimizing the bad and the ugly is should be the intention for all humans as we go into the future. Next. But behold, humans are still way smarter than robots. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Solomon. I like that. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. There you have it. Some different perspectives on robotics and how it is infiltrating our everyday lives. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to El Shaddai. Thank you so much for absorbing all this information. And El Shaddai, I'll give it to you.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you to all of our panelists. I can speak for everyone when I say that we've learned so much in this past hour. So thank you to everyone. In closing, we have an upcoming webinar. Like I said, these ICAT professional development webinars are monthly, and our next one is happening on Thursday, September 17th at noon Eastern Standard Time. The topic is leadership mindset, the power of your will over your skills. Please tell us what you thought of the webinar in the chat box. You can reach out with your name and email address, chat with me privately if you need webinar resources. And please share the upcoming event happening on September 17th with friends and family. Lastly,
may I just give a quick comment here? I just want to say, on behalf of ICAT, I want to thank everyone for being here, for the attendees, as well as the presenters. I'm really, really fascinated by the presentation. I just want to say one thing. ICAT is a human capital company. We are presenting a combination of high technology, business processes, human capital, various things. And our goal is to really create a seamless world where different disciplines talk to one another. Like this month is on robotics, and next month is on leadership mindset, and the following is another technology topics. So we appreciate everyone. And I think one thing I'm going to add is in the future, based on the presentations all of you made, especially the comments that Solomon made, is we'll be inviting some very young people to imagine the future, how we can keep a balance between, you know, job security and all the wonderful things robots can do for us. So just want to make that comment and thank you. Back to you, Al-Shaddai.
Thank you for that, Gabe. We appreciate that. Thank you to everyone for coming. Like I said, if you would like webinar resources, please be sure to chat with me privately with your name and contact information so we can reach out to you. Thank you for taking time to join us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar on September 17th.